Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Rhinebeck Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. First, I want to apologize for the less than desirable environs. Apparently, the Justice Court is behind schedule, and our usual spot is taken right now. So this has happened. I've been doing this about 20 years, maybe half a dozen times. So I don't think I guess you're unlucky. But anyway, we'll get through it. We don't have a lot of stuff to go over tonight, but we'll get through it. So first, call to order. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the meeting minutes from the last meeting on September 21st, 2022?
Yes.
Okay. And I know there were some corrections made. Any other corrections, concerns, anything like that? No? Okay, hearing none, I will make a motion that we accept the minutes for September 21st, 2022 as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, carried. The first order of new business is the case of Penny and Fred, is it Levine? Levine. Case number 1035. And Warren, if you could come up here.
Yes.
I know it's been some time since you've been here, but I think you're here today.
Yes, so this is an application for a property in Hook Road. Existing house has been there for a long time, and there were originally two lots that were owned by the same owners, and they were combined some time ago. But even so, it still remains a pre-existing non-conforming lot because of subsequent changes in zoning. So what they would like to do is put an addition on the southwest side to have a studio up above and a two-car garage down below. Currently, there's no garage in the house. But there's actually no way that we can put an addition on the house without requiring some sort of area variance. This particular side, because of the double lot, actually is 95 feet from the property line, and the setbacks for this district are 100 feet. So we're looking for a 5-foot relief there. Really, it's the most logical place to put, I mean, it's where the driveway was, the most logical place to put a garage, and it's further from any other property line than it would be anywhere else. It obviously allows us to keep the garage doors not facing the road, but facing the adjoining property, which again is 95 feet away. And again, the only practical way of giving them the additional space that they need in the house.
I see you gave us a rendering on the left side. I'm not sure if it's...
Yeah.
There it is, right there. Can we get something in color?
Sure.
Just so we can get an idea. Also, if it can be shown on, I know it's generally shown on this, where it's going to be, but if you could use the rendering, with the color to kind of show the surrounding area as well. And I don't know if you're able to do, I don't think we got an aerial to see where the neighbors might be and that kind of stuff.
We don't, I don't have one, I have one just that I picked off from Google Earth.
I think I submitted a partial access, but if you just...
Yeah, it might
Yeah,
not
this is a similar...
So this is, I
Right.
think this is this the one?
Yeah, here.
This one?
Yeah. So essentially, it was a lot like this some time ago. These two lots were combined, so this is a vacant lot. So part of this lot, and the addition would simply be here. So it's still a long way from the neighbor's
Right.
house.
And we'll go out and do a site inspection, but just to get an idea of, what the coverage is going to be, can it be seen from the other houses to what extent, and all that kind of stuff.
No more than the house is now.
Right.
Is any of them wooded? I know it looks like some probably will be removed. Any trees and that buffering the neighbors?
There's quite a steep bank, actually, right here where the original property line was. And that's why actually the garage should be lower level, the studio will be at the main level. So there are some trees, but because of the bank, they're not substantial trees, and all the ones that are substantial we're going to keep. So minimal tree removal, mostly brush hogging that's required to make access.
Would the banking help with the neighbor not being able to see?
It's really just the location of the neighbor's house in relation to this,
Okay.
changing grade in the trees.
So, I mean, I was fine with the application, it's a simple application. The only thing I wanted was maybe a current photograph of the house,
Sure.
a color rendering of the addition, and yeah, obviously staked out, you know, so when we go out there. And then just, you know, if there's a way of superimposing it. Oh, okay, there we go.
This is, I don't know how recent it is. This is just a Google.
It's really current, yeah.
Okay.
So then, so you said the driveway kind of ends here, so it's just
The
gonna.
current
right
driveway
there.
is right in front of the house, the new driveway will be a little further over and come into the lower level, and the studio addition will be right there.
So it looks like you'll have to do quite a bit of excavating on the right-hand side?
No, there's quite a bank there right now.
Is it?
Yeah, and minimize excavating. It falls away just being on the edge of the driveway.
Okay.
So will the studio be the same level as the main house?
It will be.
basically?
It will just be an
Oh,
extension
so
of the
there is a
house.
big
Yes.
drop off then.
Yeah, you can kind of
It's
see it
hard
up.
to-
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see when we go out there, but you can kind of
Yeah.
get the feel for it.
Does the driveway stay the same?
What's that?
The driveway, obviously.
It's going to move over and go into the lower level.
But entering the road is the same position?
Well, no, it'll be shifted over.
Or be shifted?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So you'll lose that one tree right there, the whole.
No, it's the other side of that tree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, concerns? Great. So anyway, I think it's a complete application. That's subject to, you know, doing the additional information. And does anybody here have any questions, concerns, requests for any additional information? Okay, hearing none, I'll make a motion that we accept the application, subject to the additional information requested. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, carried. So I believe the next date, I got it right. Yep, November 16th. Are you available on the 16th?
Sure, I will.
Okay. So make sure we get all the additional information. We'll have a public hearing on that date, and you've been through that process, we'll get through the whole thing. And then after that, I'd like to do, and some of my members will go out and do a site inspection to make sure it's staked if it's not already, and we'll go out and do that.
Okay. Would you want to do that before the public hearing or after?
I like to do it myself personally. I like to do it after the public hearing. The
Okay.
reason for that is this: I get to hear the public, if
Right.
there is any public.
Right.
So I get to hear what their concerns are,
Mhm.
which helps me when I do the site inspection
Sure.
because I have their concerns in my head when I'm doing it. So it gives me more information. But that's my
Okay, that's
personal
fine.
choice.
Sure.
It can be done before. Some people do it before. I like to do it after.
Very good.
All right, great. And then
All
we
right.
just have some housekeeping stuff to do. According to my cheat sheet, it's a type 2 action in a sense. Granting of a lot line variance, so I make a motion that we consider this to be a type 2 action under 617.5C16, granting of individual setback and lot line variance and adjustment. Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. And then referrals, obviously the planning board and then the WAC?
Yep, it's in the LWRP, so.
It is, okay. All right. So you'll take care of that?
Yep.
Alrighty. And that's really about it, other than who is going to do the resolution.
I'll do it.
With the, so, take it, but it's pretty simple. It's gonna feel
I'm taking
guilty.
the simple.
I was gonna, okay. Since you're in training, I was like, yeah, I figure everybody's gonna glom onto this one, this is easy.
I couldn't wait to say yeah.
Okay. All right, okay. Okay, great, so we're done. So
All right,
we'll see you on
thank
the
you.
16th.
Very good.
Thanks, Warren. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
All right. So that's Levine. Okay. Now, I know that we have, that's it for the new business. We have 2 public hearings. One is it our Zoom? Aruz. Okay, and then we have Lloyd. One thing I always say when we have these public hearings is that I expect civility I demand civility. I won't have non-civility. So, I mean, I know that people have opinions here, questions. This is important for everybody, including the applicants, and also, just as important, the neighbors. I expect everybody to, be on, I don't want to say the best behavior, I'm not your dad, but, sometimes these things can get out of hand. I just remind everybody, we are on TV, and be civil, and I'm sure everybody will be. And with that, I leave it to you, Mark. Why don't you present the Aruz application, and then, is anybody here for Aruz?
Yes, so,
So we have a couple of folks for Aruz. So what will happen here is he's going to give the presentation, and then you will have the opportunity to get up and to ask whatever questions you have of the applicant or the applicant's representative. Make any comments you wish. And I know there have been some comments we've received. So just once he gets done, feel free to ask as many questions that you have.
actually, Scott, so I'm gonna do an overall presentation, and so Christina Ducharme,
Okay.
the architect, is also here, and the owner applicant, Nadine Aruz, is also here.
Okay.
So, I'll do an overall, and then Christina will go into some of the architecture and the renderings that have been
Right.
provided to the board.
And if you're not the person to ask answer the question, then one of the other people can. So,
Okay.
all right, great, go for it.
Anything you want in particular?
Yeah, Kim, can we have the site plan? Is there a microphone, or is it?
You mean a
Microphone.
Oh, I didn't have it.
you
Yeah.
mean a cursor?
Pointer?
A pointer. She has a. Don't you have it?
Yes.
Press it here.
Yep.
Good evening. I'm Mark Raminsky, consulting engineer and land surveyor. I'm representing Nadine Aruz for an application for area variance to this board. Nadine owns property on the west side of Ackerhook Road. Parcel size is just a little under 14 acres in size. It's 13.9 acres. And this application for area variance is with regarding an accessory structure that's being proposed on the property. Running in parallel with application to this board is also an application for site plan special permit with the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. And so since this is the principal residence on the property, as I said before, this is a barn accessory structure. It requires application of, because of the size and nature of the structures on the property, it requires applications to both boards. So we have met with the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board and have discussed the application, and their determination is pending this board's determination. So the reason for application to this board is with regard to this accessory structure. So due to its size, I should start. So principal residence is 5 bedrooms, and then this is a garage barn that is proposed to. It'll have 2 levels. Lower level will be for automobile storage, and the upper level is for is for habitable space. Or space, space to be used for recreation. So, due to the size of the structure, there are actually 3 area variances that are being requested for consideration by this board, and those have been determined by the zoning administrator of the town. So first, and we had had discussion with the board about this during our initial presentation. First is the total height of the barn. And so accessory structure maximum allowable height is 20 feet. This structure is 25 feet. So that's one of the area variances being requested. Second, a second variance requested. So this, so the current zoning of this property is RC5. And so what's allowed in RC5 for residential properties with accessory structures is a total of 1,500 square feet allowed, total floor area allowed for accessory structures. So total floor area being proposed in this, for this is actually 4,488 square feet. So it is in excess of that. And then finally, as determined by the zoning administrator, that the amount of actual habitable space in an accessory structure is 900 square feet. And so we are also in excess of that. That habitable space is on the second story of the barn. I note that application has already been made to the town, or excuse me, to the Dutchess County Health Department. Health Department has approved the sewage disposal system and water supply for both structures. So it's a combination of sanitary sewer connects here, and these are the absorption fields that are being proposed for the property. This is the primary. That is the expansion. Only the primary is to be constructed. In addition, access, as I said before, is off the west side of Ackerhook Road. Approval has been obtained from the Town of Rhinebeck Highway Superintendent. I think, best now that I think we could, and in, previous, initial application to this board, some architectural plans for the barn were submitted. And so that's why I asked for Christina Ducharme's office to be here this evening to discuss this structure, and also renderings that have been also provided to this board.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. So I think just to point out, for starters, Nadeem can speak to the use of the barn and kind of the origin of the design, but in creating the structure, we're really looking to create something that spoke to the vernacular of the area. That's a barn structure, a gabled structure, and the footprint of the barn was derived from the needs of the client to serve his hobby of automobile collecting and rehabilitation. And so I know there's been a lot of discussion about the second floor of the barn and what that is used for and could potentially be used for in the future. And essentially the footprint of the barn was really, in essence, derived from the first floor of what we needed to house the automobiles. And the second floor is sort of just derived from exactly that, like creating, a barn structure that speaks to the classic vernacular of the area, gabled structure, and it's going to be used for private use. I think it's also worth pointing out that, as Mark mentioned, there's a primary septic field and a reserve, and in evaluating the site, we decided to keep the primary field closer to the barn structure in consideration of the neighbor, to maintain the trees around the perimeter. Maybe we can flip to some of the. Yeah, do you want to do the renderings?
I had some. Yeah, I'd like some renderings, because I know the last time around we had some very nice renderings of the structure, the primary residence, but there was nothing on the barn, and that's why we're here.
These were the latest ones that were submitted.
Right.
Yeah, that gives you a sense of the orientation of the main residence to the barn. There's some elevation difference between the residence and the barn. And I guess what you can't see in this rendering is that the road is actually quite a ways away from these structures. So this is sort of a zoomed in view of the property. And
It's not all evergreens around there though, is it?
no, it's not. I mean, it's
It's
a
not
mix.
at all.
It's a mix of different types of trees. But
This just implies less visibility than there probably is.
sure, yes.
Yeah, and an important thing, obviously, is the visibility that any neighbor may have.
Right.
So, and then, so I was kind of looking for, I mean, we're gonna go out on the site and check out things, I'll probably go to the neighbors, written and actually said, you know, come to my site and we'll see, and then we'll go on site and check it from that vantage point. But what I was looking for was, yeah, how it was gonna look, and just kind of the structure itself, all set
Sure.
just as you did with the primary house, just the barn and what it was gonna look like. And not, I mean, we have an idea, but
I mean that pretty accurately depicts what the barn is going to look like. There's a gabled structure. There's a window on each end. There's
Okay.
a window on each
Yeah.
end of the gable, and that's just to provide some kind of light to the second floor. There's a shed structure off of the end, just to house some household equipment like snow shovels and that sort of thing.
What
but
size is the piece off the end there?
the piece off the end?
Yes, the
Yeah.
housing of.
Off the top of my head, I'm
looks
sure
like
that's
about
on
12
our
by 35 or
drawings.
something like that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? 12 by 35? It looks like
Yes.
there's a workshop and storage area that's envisioned for back there. Is that, if I'm reading it right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's this piece right here.
So it's about 12-ish and 35.
I have a question on, so in the principal dwelling, you had provided renderings for in your original application, and the coloring of the exterior looked kind of more similar to this dark brown or dark gray, and here it's kind of more tan. Is there a difference? Is it going to be, what color is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're leaning towards the darker color, but it's, I mean, the design of the structure is accurately represented. I think, we're particularly for the barn structure, we're looking for a darker color that will recede into the landscape so that it doesn't, it has a minimal impact on the environment.
Have you considered any other sites for this? I know that one of the concerns of the neighbors is that he'll be able to see this during certain parts of the year and that kind of stuff. Are there any viable other sites that you've considered that would ameliorate that or just get rid of any site issues?
I mean, I think, you want to take a stab at that?
Kim, if you could go back to the site plan, and we'll try to enlarge it as much as possible. So where I'm going to go with, in response to that, Scott,
Okay.
is the topographic relief of the property. So you can see right here, this is a very, very steep section. See how close the right, so these are 1 foot, it's 1 foot contour interval relief. And so, like for example, this section is extremely steep through here. There's actually, there's located over here is a state wetland, although the adjacent area does not enter into this property. But I guess the short answer is the existing topographic relief on the site pretty much dictated where you could go. Kim, if you could zoom out a little bit, please.
Essentially, there's really two flat areas, right? Like one
And
where
that's
it's
what
the
I'm getting
primary
at.
house
See,
and one is the
so right
accessory.
here is a hill, right? That contour wraps around like that, so you have a hill here, right? And so you can see So the driveway design was, the location of the driveway was driven by topography in order to have, suitable and safe grades to enter into the residence. There is a little bit of a flatter area here, but once again, in order to get there, the topography gets steeper in this area, and then this entire area is eliminated. And then what also,
How about top right?
up here,
Yeah.
this is all wet. So
Okay.
all this is what, so drainage comes down through here. So you have the drainage pipe,
Yeah.
all surface runoff comes through here, and actually what happens is this water comes down through here, this water comes down through here. During our heavy rains, this section of Acre Brook Road goes underwater. So this was eliminated, too steep through here, right? And then once again, how do you get there? You have, a long driveway. You have to essentially, you can see what I did here, just going around the contours and just slowly creeping up the side in order to have acceptable grades, in order to have a safe and easily accessible driveway. So once again, it was site topography which drove this location. There aren't, this entire area is really not suitable for construction of the residence. And what I was also going to say is that in doing soil testing on the property also, this was the most suitable location for putting in on-site sewage disposal. So obviously the idea is we want it to be above that so it could all be served by gravity. This area is what you get too low through here also, right? And then, choosing this location seemed to be the obvious choice based on physical constraints.
Right, well, I don't think there's any quarrel with where the house is going to be, it's just obviously the garage. And
Sure.
that was what it was.
Per the previous question, 12 by 35 is the correct
Yeah.
dimensions for that shed structure.
You know what, I guess, because I did see the comment letter from Mr. Lagno. So I did print out this evening, this is a shot of I used New York State GIS aerial photography, and I made a couple copies, but it came out black and white, so this is my only color one where you can really see it. So for example, here's the residence, here's our driveway that comes in, here's the residence, here's Lagno's residence right here, right? And so you can see it's all wooded through here. So it's just a kind of an overall view, aerial view of the property. So I wish I
You can see this as
Some
well.
of that wooded area is gonna come out.
Yeah, can you scan it
Sorry,
right?
Andrew.
That'd be awesome.
Some of the woods are gonna come out.
We're gonna make some copies.
Directly between him and the
Yeah.
barn.
Right, oh yeah.
Because
So-
of the setback.
Yeah, so Christina mentioned that. So this is expansion, this doesn't get cleared, so this area gets cleared right here. It's cleared for the barn and it's cleared for this absorption field, that's it.
So hopefully when you guys do your site
expansion
visit,
area-
you'll see there's actually quite a buffer of trees around this area. And, as I'm sure you know, we're not asking for a variance for a setback.
Mhm.
It's just the size of the structure. So.
Well, this one, when I was looking at the letter, the comment letter, it seems like we've had some of these kind of situations before where, we go and do the site visit for the applicant, but also go on to the site if allowed by the neighbor.
Absolutely.
So so we can get the advantage of the neighbor, and we did that, just recently down in
Number of
Rhinebeck.
times.
Yeah, a number of times. So it gives us the full vantage point. So we'll probably do that.
So
On both,
what's the elevation rise between the barn and the primary? It looks like there's some rise. The house is at the highest point.
right, so here's 5, 10, 15.
Did you say those were 5-foot increments or?
Well, so the darker ones,
Uh-huh.
5-foot increments,
Okay,
1 foot is between.
okay.
Right, so we're 5, 10, 15, 20 feet. We're cutting this down a little bit in order to accommodate grading into the porte cochere that's associated with the residence.
And did you consider being able to move the whole barn and the septic toward the house?
No, actually, I did extensive, as I said, I think I dug something like 12 or 15 test holes through here. And so it's shallow depth to rock. There's rock at the surface here, so it's shallow depth to rock. And so that led, actually in this area here, I got the required amount of existing soils in order to allow for a conventional conventional septic system to be installed at that point. So my soil depths were only 2 feet.
So would it be possible though to move the barn closer to the house and still have that leach field or whatever it's called?
Well, once again, when you take a look at how the regrading of the driveway, so this driveway this barn has 2 points of ingress and egress. You can come in this way and this way. So there's actually, in order to do this gets raised quite a bit. So once again, the topography dictates the location of this and the grading associated with it. So, also through here, you can see that this is a level area. This is a flatter area through here, and then once again you have pretty steep slopes through here. So once again, this plateau was chosen for the location of the barn, just for to minimize the amount of site disturbance and regrading on the property.
Essentially, it looks like a huge property, but when you actually start studying all the conditions, there's a very limited amount of areas that can be built upon,
Yeah, there's a small
and
envelope.
where the driveway can go. I mean, we went back and forth so many times on like, how do we even get the driveway up to the flat area at the top where we knew that made most sense to construct the residence. It's like a challenge even just to get that up there. That's why it's that large, like question mark shape, is because it has to go all the way around in order to navigate all of that topography. So, I mean, once you take out the steep slopes and the wetlands and the areas that are suitable for the septic system, there's actually not a lot left.
And that is a septic system for the barn and the house?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it's all gravity fed?
Yes, it is.
Does the applicant own the property to the south as well?
No.
Now, so a little bit of history on this. So if you could just slide this down. Oh, this actually covers it. So this shaded area right here is the parcel that is in application right now. Last year, maybe around this time, this right here is the parent parcel. So this was subdivided. So the current ownership of both parcels is Lower Acker Hook Road Partners LLC, but there are 2 partners. So Nadeem is the partner here, and then you also received a letter of support from Christian Lundigo. Christian owns this piece right here.
As well as other parcels to the south of that, where his residence is located.
Right, so Christian's residence is actually located here, right there.
Is Mr. Lagno to the top right?
Mr. Lagno is, Kim, if you could,
Yep.
So he's there.
let's see, so,
No,
right there,
Right there.
right there, I'm trying to stay steady, right there,
I think it's right.
Basically, it's this one here,
it's right
which
there,
is like this area.
Okay, that's better. All right, so that right.
right there.
May I add something real quick? Is that
Sure,
okay?
you can.
This, my house is right here. This is the barn. My house is like right here. And this elevation, this is like 450 feet elevation or something. What's that, above sea level? Is that how they say that? And I don't know what mine is. Mine's got to be at least 100 feet down. So this is a big hill. It's like a mansion overlooking a regular man's
And
house.
if you could just state your name and address for the record.
sure.
I know who you are, but if you could just for the
Oh,
record.
I'm Doug Lagno. I live at 624 Aqueduct Road.
Great, okay.
And we'll make sure that more will open the public. I think that was just more of a question.
Yeah.
So my point there is that they're up here and I'm down here.
Right, and-
And that's,
Okay. Any other questions from the board? And otherwise, I'll open it up to Mr. Lagno or anybody else who's here.
I had a question.
Okay?
So one of the issues was on the height of the barn.
Yes.
Uh,
Do you want me to pull up any floor plans or anything?
Actually, Scott has his right here, so I can kind of see it.
Is it the arc,
So, I'm wondering if you considered at all having it be shorter, 5 feet shorter, and having a knee wall inside on the upper space so that that area would be a smaller habitable space that would address 2 issues. That's a very big space up there.
Well, I think that it certainly looks like a very big space in plan, but again, the second floor is really derived by what is needed for the utility of the first floor. So you can see how the cars fit in there, you know, I think if we flip to the elevations, yep, there you go. I mean, you can see, so here we've got the floor level of the second floor, and yet you can't stand on these. These are tiny little knee walls, to your point, on the corner. So really, we're just trying to have, you know, some space in the center which is usable, and the primary function of this barn is really the first floor. And so if you look at it, you see like this volume is really what is setting the scale of the overall structure.
Right, but I guess with Catherine's point, if really you're talking about the first floor being the most important part, and not just because of the cars, and I think isn't there a lift and that kind of stuff going on, which makes it, you need a higher ceiling and the rest of it.
Right.
Do you really need to have the extra 5 feet? Do you really need to
It's
have
actually
that
not 5
space?
feet. It's three. The knee walls are 3'6" on the corner, so it means pretty minimal in terms of it. You know, even gaining headroom and you know, reasonable amount of space for the second floor.
So you're saying that, let me just get up to ask. You're saying that this right here is 3'6"?
Correct, on the interior, yes.
On the inside? Mm-hmm. And what's this distance, do you know?
Yeah, we can look that up. We can do it right now.
Okay. Because if that's, I mean, this may be,
It's about 17 feet from the floor to the top of the ridge. So that maybe it's 16 feet on the interior, and 3'6" on the knee walls on the outside. And the pitch of the roof is 8 on 12.
May I ask 2 questions? Is that okay?
Well, when they're done, you have the floor and you can ask as many questions as you like.
Thank you.
Mr. Lagno.
So there's
okay, I mean, I could have more discussion with you about it, but I think that answers one question about what the height is, so.
Did you have any questions?
But I just, it'd be really.
I guess that my sticking point, not I don't want to say sticking point, but I mean, the main thing is that you have to have the first floor and that's increased height because you need lifts and things like that. And I understand that. But that obviously adds to the problem about the top part being higher than allowed. And you really need that space up there. Is what I'm getting at. I mean, what's it really going to be used for? Since really what you're using the place for is for the first floor.
Also, just while we're getting numbers, what's this number from here to here?
It's gotta be 9.
No, it's higher than that because of the lift, isn't it?
I think it's proposed 25 feet, so 16 and 9.
Yeah, I think it was higher than 10.
But
right?
25
is
the middle.
Oh, I see.
14.
Yeah.
What is it?
14.
14 feet?
14.
Okay, thank you. And then not to,
No, go for it.
So I think also what might be helpful, I know Nadeem has some photos of his existing barn structure, which is just down the street from this, and how that's being used. And really, it's sort of like, you know, that structure has sort of been outgrown, and he's looking to expand into this. So you have some photos that.
What's the height of that?
And plus square footage, I mean, there's, I think they're a lot smaller.
Yeah.
88.
It's much smaller, and you know, it's cramped. So we were looking to create something.
Well, we're
that
not talking about the
functions.
first floor so much, we're talking about the second floor, which...
The upstairs is crammed too.
Yeah, but as far as the, what the existing house, what's the height of the existing place that is utilized right now? I bet you it's not 25 feet.
Well, it's, what is it, probably, it's got lifts down there right now, so that's 14 feet downstairs.
Okay.
And then in the peak, I can't touch it, so it's gotta be, I don't know, maybe 10 feet in the peak, something like that.
And if you could just state your name.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You're on camera.
Nadeem Aruz.
Okay.
So yeah, so the whole kind of genesis of this project was that I had outgrown my house, and I had outgrown the garage, and so this was an opportunity to kind of like figure out what was working, what wasn't working, and try and address that in this project. So I brought some pictures of just how currently everything's being utilized. So this isn't just like some pipe dream, it's like a real use case scenario where I literally have so much stuff packed into this current garage that I had to move 2 things out to get 1 thing out.
Yeah, no one's suggesting that, but
No, I'm just
the
that.
height of this, and especially given, you know, what may be a visual issue,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
The other issue that I have currently in my garage is that I have just a pull-down attic ladder to get everything up there, which is I found out to be pretty dangerous and something I don't want to do anymore. So that's part of the reason for the height and getting upstairs and having easy access through a stairway with a proper railing, because it's been not fun to carry skis up a attic lift if you've
Or
ever.
does it make sense to expand on the lower level? I know you have storage and things like that in the back. Instead of having to utilize that extra space up top, which may impair Mr. Lagno's view, and get it to 20 where
Yeah.
you don't need a variance, can you expand the back out?
Well, I think one thing to
I'm
consider
just
is that,
throwing these
you know,
things out there. That's
the economy of construction is that it's you know, it's much more expensive to build a large 1-story structure than it is, like, you know, if we were to reduce this by a couple feet, essentially the upstairs would become a lot less useful, and we're still building, you know, a roof and the rafters and all the framing and all the elements of it. So like gaining, you know, like a couple of feet now makes the second floor useful for Nadeem to be able to store the things he needs to store.
But is it really that expensive to blow out the back? You know, the back area that we've been talking about there.
Oh, absolutely. Like if we were to take the second floor program and expand the first floor to accommodate that, that would be a huge financial burden.
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one is that the upstairs is habitable, so that's quite a large habitable space. And we're talking about the size of the variances requested, the location in light of the neighbor's plans, and also the future. And that this then potentially in the future becomes a 5,000 square foot habitable space in addition to the whatever square footage the primary residence is. So I think those are the things that, at least for me, I have to take into consideration as we
Agreed.
look at this. If it was not habitable, it's just storage, it's just cold storage.
Well, that's what we're
If
looking.
it's,
So,
you
to
know-
your point, that's what we're looking to create, and that's been part of the discussion thus far. Is like, how do we create this storage space that our client needs? And you know, we're not looking to create a habitable space. We're not looking to create an accessory dwelling. We're not looking to create. You know, we're not looking for these windows to be egress windows and to have bedrooms up there. It's really, the second floor is derived by the first floor. And
But
then-
If the second floor is derived by the first floor and all it is storage, then you don't need the plumbing, you don't need the kitchen, you don't need the other things that are indicated.
Wasn't it also represented it was for like hanging out or recreate? I mean, Mark said earlier today it was for recreational purposes.
Private recreational purposes, just for Nadine, like
But
it's,
that's habitable.
It just feels like it's either habitable or it's not, you know, and if it's not, then it's not heated, it doesn't have septic, it doesn't have all those other things, and it's different, it's still very large, but it's a different consideration. If it's habitable, then it's also very large and potentially a much larger habitable space than downstairs.
And you still haven't convinced me, although I will tell you that I'm just a lawyer. I don't do what you do, but I don't understand why it's so much more expensive to blow out the back if you just want to have storage.
well, just because, I mean, the cost of creating a structure, just a basic structure, again, like, that's essentially what we're creating here is, you know, we have the whole first floor and it needs a roof and it
Right.
needs, you know, gable end walls. And so just in, you know, unless we were creating like a, you know, a flat roof structure, which is actually more expensive most of the time than creating a gable, this is, you know, this shape is the result of the needs of the first floor. So if we were going to take all of that, you know, storage area and expand the first floor, then we would have a structure that's twice as big as this.
So
You
what
know,
is this used for? This part? That little addition?
So
That's
that was,
storage
the idea
and,
there was just to put other sort of household items, like literally like snow shovels and that sort of.
It's just stuff
sort
for
of thing.
outside work, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because right now everything's jammed into one garage, along with my workshop. So essentially, I have a vise and tools next to the cars, and that makes me really stressed out and nervous because everything's really packed in there. So I'm trying to create separate spaces for everything so I can work separately from where the cars are. The question I think around why it's so expensive, I plan to have radiant heat in downstairs, and if we were to do a larger foundation, to your point, then that means more radiant heat, more piping, more work. That's way more expensive.
That I can understand.
So that's where my head is at and why I don't want to go
Okay, well,
out
that
further.
explains,
Yeah.
that explains. Okay.
And the other consideration, I think you mentioned the septic and making sure we switched the primary and secondary so that the primary was right off the back of the garage, so we didn't have to remove any more trees. The other thing, I don't know if we talked about, was just the orientation of the garage. We specifically oriented the garage so that the narrow side is kind of like the closest corner to Doug's house. Doug's house is offset and faces away from, not away, but it faces in a different direction from where the garage is. So essentially the garage is like at the corner of his house, not directly in view of his living room or something like that. It's offset to the side. So that was all done on purpose because I know when this is all said and done, I still have to live next to Doug. He has to live next to me. He still has to come to my house and get his paper. Like, we have to all do these things together. So I don't want.
No, I understand.
I get the kind of the construct of what's going on here, but Doug and I have to live near each other for a lot longer than this meeting's going to last. So I just want to make sure that we're doing as best as we can to fit his needs, but also to fit mine.
No, and I appreciate that because it's actually set forth in Doug's letter that you guys have talked, and we appreciate that. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
And you're trying to work together. But after you get done, I want to hear from.
Just one
Oh,
thing,
yeah, you guys. I want to hear
I
from
just have
Phil.
one thing. If you weren't seeking a variance for the 5 feet, from what I understand, then still from the second floor to the top, it'd still be 11 feet to the center, right? I mean, so you'd have a little bit less on the side, but you'd still have a pretty big space and pretty high ceilings in the center of the second floor if you were not seeking the 5 feet variance.
I mean, 11 feet seems like a lot, but when you have,
I know.
when you have this 8 on 12 pitch, right? I mean, if we were to flatten the roof out, yeah, we could do 11 feet. We could do like a really flat roof, and we could probably get some usable space up there. But we're trying to create something that fits with the vernacular of the area, and this is really like essentially like a hayloft, that we're looking to create, and it's the usable space up there is really not as much as it seems, I think.
Question I have is, where is the lift going to be in this?
I'm sorry?
Where is the lift going to be?
A lift.
Lift.
The lift, the car lift.
So there's two lifts.
On the side.
Where's the side of the up here?
Up there, yeah.
So, okay, so here's a lift right here, and here's a lift right here.
That's why you have.
And then up on the second floor, what you really, what's not articulated on this plan, this looks like a big blank open area, but really it's, you said 25? 25% of the floor area of the second floor will be less than 7 feet.
But then I think that needs to be indicated, because actually, I don't think the living space would be calculated at the full second floor, would it? If it's not,
Well, I
if
have
it's
a
under.
question about that, but I can ask it after.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to clarify that, but if it's not counted as living space because it's under head height, then that should be kind of grayed out, in which I don't think that open area would, that might still be able to be open like that, but those two storage spaces might not even be usable.
Well, they're really not. I mean, like I
so-
said,
so then-
you're crawling down on your knees to get to this edge here. So it's what's that? 3'6" along the edge, along these edges here. So
I thought you said 3'6" on the outside.
3'6" on the inside.
On the inside.
On the inside.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So to get the 5 feet, you'd have to bring the edge down that full 3'6", and
And you'd have to
change
flatten the roof pitch, which
You'd
I
have
think would be aesthetically a compromise. I mean, I think looking the barns and the the vernacular of the agricultural buildings in our area is the steeper roof pitches that similar to what we're showing. So I think if we were to flatten it to say like a 3-on-12 pitch, it would really be it would be a shame.
And that's pretty much how every house on Acrohook is, on the south side of Acrohook, has a barn of a similar structure and design.
So one last question. Couldn't you move those lifts? Like one in the center where the center car is and then one on the other side? So then you can lower the whole thing instead of on the edges. So you come in, you go into the center space, come in, go to the other center space.
oh, that's interesting.
Because then you could lower the whole thing because you don't need the 11 foot anymore on the
Well,
outside edges.
I mean, the other thing to consider is that we need headroom for the staircase going up. To Nadine's point about previous cities building with a pull down stair.
Well, no, that would
No,
just just lessen your height, your step, your rise and your step.
I don't think I can have a lift in front of the door on the right side.
Oh, that's a door there. Oh,
There's two
On
doors.
this
So
side,
there's
yeah.
a door on the side and there's a door on the side.
Well, I think a lot of us have asked questions, and an important person here probably has a bunch of questions, and that would be Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner, yes. We typically don't have one.
Yeah, motion
All right, I have a motion that, I thought we did that already, okay. All right, so we're opening the public hearing at this point in time, and Mr. Wagner, I think you have some questions?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so if you just again state your name and address.
Doug Lagnow, 624 Aqueduct Road, Rhinebeck, New York. Hello, everybody. Could you please help me, the picture with the roof line, 25-foot roof line? I don't know which. Okay, so obviously it's way more than 25 feet. How really tall is it? How tall is it, guys? They're using 25 feet somehow to make it work in the
I
zoning.
just wanted to,
Okay.
so, the way that it is measured for gabled roof, in the zoning law, is that the roof height is measured from the ground to the center of the gable.
Okay, but how tall is it?
But it's to the average, the zoning code is to the
But how
average.
tall is it? Like 30 feet, 31 feet? I think you said something was 17 and something was 14, that's like 31 feet. So it's really taller than what it says. I'm just putting that out. Is that factual?
It's taller, yes, it's taller, definitely taller than 20
Okay,
feet.
so it's probably closer to 30 feet. Okay, now, could we please go to the picture with all the trees around the property? Then I'll start.
Okay.
You tell me if I should do so. There's not one evergreen tree around here. Everyone is a maple tree. Most of them sugar maples, and they're tall. They're like 20, 30, 40, 50 feet, and there's no branches on the first 10 feet. And I see everything. I see a stake. They got a stake in the ground, mark out the property with a little orange cord around it, orange tape, and I can see that from my living room. And that's a foot, 2 feet off the ground, not 20, 31 feet off the ground. So you'll see when you guys come.
We'll be out there.
Yeah.
So
this is,
but I know you're getting excited, so
Okay.
just the facts and.
okay. So my name is Doug Wagner, and I've lived on Knockers Road for 65 years consecutively. My property I live on has been a Wagner family land since 1948. That's 74 years of ownership. Do you guys have this? Would you want?
Yes, well, yeah, no, we have that.
We read it.
That's why I've been asking questions
Beautiful.
based upon some of these.
I know you had it. Thank you, sir. So I have a beautiful house and I have a beautiful view, and a proposed accessory structure we built on a southeast view of my living room, and it's top of a really big hill. It's got to be 100 feet tall. I don't know that because I don't have. Well, we'll get into that later on. So I'll be able to see the structure 12 months out of the year, and 6 months a year I'll be able to see the whole thing. I'll be able to see everything. I mean, that's just a fact. You'll see that when you come up.
If it's at 20 feet, which they're allowed, you may be able to see it.
It will be a lot better.
regardless.
I would be more than happy with it. If it stays in that same.
Have you guys talked about buffers at all? Any kind of buffering that can be done? I don't know if it's possible given the topography.
Happy to talk about it.
No, but it's in my suggestions in here. So I think we have a long way to go. I think you guys have a lot of good questions. I appreciate it very much. So I think the location and size of the proposed accessory structure will decrease my property value. My plan is to continue to live on Knockers Road for a long time, because I've been here for 65 years, so I think I'm going to be here, God willing, as long as I can. But if I ever wanted to sell my house, and a potential buyer asks, what is that structure there? Why is it so huge? What do I say? I mean, I don't know. It's gigantic. I say, what is it? So anyway, I took 6 months to build my house, 2006. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it, and it's the biggest investment of my life. And I hate to have it depreciate by 25, 50,000, having this thing in my view. I mean, this structure in my view. That's how I feel. Okay, so that's my concern number one, is the view of it and the depreciation of my property value. And you guys will see when you come over. Okay, concern number two, well, this is the most important, the size of the thing. We are here today because the proposed accessory structure does not meet the town of Rhinebeck code requirement. The proposal is to build a 480 square foot structure with its 25-foot roof height. We know it's going to be taller now. The roof height using 25 feet is 25% taller than what the code requirement is. So it's 25% taller than what the code requirement is. And the 488 square foot is 300% more than the code requirement. That's 2,980 square foot more than the code requirement. So what's going on here is the homeowner wants to build a resort up there. How big is the house? May I ask how big the house is? Is it like 5,200 and some feet or something? Or is it 5,000?
Not even 5,000.
Yeah, I'm sure we've submitted the square footages, but
Okay,
it's
so
less than 5,000.
we use 5,000. So 5,000 or
It's less than,
4,000?
I would say it's less than 5,000 for the record.
I think
Okay,
it
so-
was, 5,056.
Okay. So, because there's no trees and it is 5,000, so. All right, so he's building, that's a total of 9,888 square feet for a family of four. You think that's enough space? You think that's enough space?
Well, we're here for the accessory structure. That's
well,
you can build
okay.
a house as big as you want.
Right, good, I could build a 6,000 square foot house and put a garage on the house, that's what my suggestion would be. So what happens when you have such a big structure? He's got a big house and he's got this big thing. I mean, he said he's gonna be low-key, and I believe him, I appreciate that. But what happens if he gets tired of it, and someone else comes in there? Then it could be an Airbnb, it could be anything, it could be rental, it could be, it's huge, you got a garage downstairs, living space upstairs. I think we're here to think about what can happen in the future also. Anyway, this is my preliminary objection to this variance, and so, you know, we'll get more into that. All right. Okay, so you know, Mr. Aruz had reached out to me. It's very nice of him to do that. We didn't speak really I didn't say too much because I just wanted to listen to him, but I wanted to go here first. So we didn't speak about anything. He just told me he's going to be low key, and he told me that it's not going to be a hangout place. Although these guys, this gentleman right here told me a couple weeks ago there was going to be a hangout place, and this lady, or somebody said it's going to be a recreational place. So it's certainly going to be used for something, right? Habitable space. I don't know why you need that when you have 5,000 square feet elsewhere. Seemed excessive to me. So, all right, so that's that. So my concern is that it's just so much bigger. It's 300% bigger than what's permitted. I think it's a no-brainer. That. All right, we'll continue.
Is your main complaint? I understand you say it's way too big, but it's really the height. Is that the main?
Well, the height, location, and the size.
Right. Well, the location, you know, it can be there. It's just the size of it and the height of it.
Well, he could build it big as he wants elsewhere, as long as I don't see it. I don't care what he does.
Well, that's why I ask those questions. Sometimes you have property where there's a very small envelope where you can put stuff. And it sounds like, and we'll find out from going out there, that this may be one of those properties. It's a big property, but you have problems with, you know, either wetlands or outcroppings or whatever it is, and there's really only one sensible place to put it.
Thank you so much. Could we please see, maybe it was the first one, topographical, the map, it was the driveway and the houses and everything? There we go. So, this is all on a hill. This is all very tall here. This is all on a hill here. This does get very wet, and this does flood, like Mr. Comiskey said. But I don't have a team of guys here. If I had enough time, if you guys give me time, I would get a team of guys to represent me. Maybe this is a good location right here. I don't know that. Mr. Comiskey says that, and he's great at what he does. But maybe somebody else.
That was said to be wetland right there.
Well, this is that wetland right there?
Yeah.
And what does that mean, wetlands? Not permitted to build on?
The land is wet, whether it's designated
Well,
wetlands.
let Mark explain it.
So all runoff goes through here, Doug, you know how this floods out?
Yes, it does.
All the runoff, you have a culvert there.
Uh-huh.
It would be a mistake to build here. It
Okay.
would be a poor choice to do that.
It would be a choice, but it would be a poor choice.
It would also not be in the setbacks to build there. I mean, I think it has to be said that we're building within the setbacks.
Well, I don't know these things.
Well, no, that's a valid point, that if you did move it there, you'd be asking for another variance.
Correct.
But
a different variant.
And I'd be okay with that.
Right, and I think it also should be said that, you know, based on the zoning, we could actually flip the location of the house and the barn, and, you know, that would be
That would be
worse for you, right? So
Well,
it's
please
like,
don't do that.
right, exactly.
Okay, so they're calling the accessory structure a barn. It doesn't really matter what they call it, but somewhere it's called a barn. No other barn is overlooking someone else's house from Primrose Hill Road up until to this spot. After the Primrose Hill Road is way over here somewhere. There's a bunch of houses. It's my opinion that the proposed accessory building does not fit the charm or architecture of Lower Aqueduct Road due to the size and location. It's out of place. And I don't know what classic vernacular means. I don't know what that means.
It's a barn structure, and like the letter that we received from the other neighbor, which was praising the project and the character of the barn, it just means that we're building a structure that is in keeping with the character of other structures in the area, specifically on Aqueduct Road and in Rhinebeck and in the Hudson Valley in general.
Who would that person be? Would that be Mr. Ruiz's partner who gave that letter?
That would be Christian.
That's Mr. Ruiz's partner.
Christian Munger.
I understand. I think his point, I don't know if you've read the letters, and we'll see what's what, but in the area of where this is, there's 1, 2, 3, he cites 4 different barns that are much less in size than what is proposed. And so I think that's what you're.
Yes, I'd like to go through that road just real quick. House number 1 has a 1296 barn, number 2 has a 1200 barn, Mr. Roos's garage is 88 square feet. I got this all off the parcel. And the other one is 625. So if you add them all together, it comes out to be a 4,000 square foot for all the 4 barns already there on that road. And he wants to build a 4,488. It's bigger than all of them combined. Why don't we just put them all there? Why don't we just go forward with that?
And those square footages are derived from,
Excuse me?
in your letter, the square footages of the accessory
From the
structures?
parcels on tax parcel,
Parcel access?
I guess, yes. I mean, there could be some error there, it could be a little bigger.
Well, we'll check into it.
Yeah. So he wants to build a barn that's bigger than all 4 barns already on that road. Doesn't seem to me that fits. Okay, so just in conclusion, so as we overlooking my house, if you increase my property value, also make it less attractive to sell. It'll be adjusted to my southern view, also make it less attractive to sell. I mean, it's so big. What will the next owner do with all that square footage? I mean, okay. So what are the options? What can we do? You know, I guess we could build it elsewhere. I mean, it's possible. Because maybe it's more expensive. Who knows? You know, they know. Why not build it in line with the square footage of the existing barns on Ockett Road? The biggest barn there is 1296. He wants to build a 4488. I mean, it seems excessive to me. It seems really excessive.
I understand what you're saying.
I mean, those are all facts. I mean,
I think the important thing will be for us to do the site inspection from
Absolutely.
your property and from this
absolutely.
property, and we'll be able to see.
Okay, so you're invited to my
Drive
property.
by of these other barns and-
And we'll do the drive-by of the other barns. We'll
Oh, absolutely.
thoroughly look at the neighborhood. We have to.
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
So, okay, so my question was, I don't know what your procedure was, so we're gonna go look at everything, and what would happen then after that?
I think what I anticipate we will do is that we will coordinate, and first of all, I'd like the two of you, if you could, continue to talk about the situation, maybe talk about buffering and some other things, whatever options. That's always great when the neighbors talk. I think what we would do is, we've done this in the past, is to coordinate a site visit with the two of you and go into both properties and make our own analysis of what we see from your property, what we see from your property, get the whole lay of the land, do canvassing of the neighborhood to see what the rest of the neighborhood looks like. And then from there, we'll make a decision. That's what we typically do. I don't think I would.
Sounds great, I appreciate it very much.
Good job.
Just review the timing of what we usually do.
Yeah, and typically what we do is, we're having a public hearing right now. And this is why I like to do the site inspection after
Yeah,
a
it makes a lot
public
of
hearing.
sense, yeah.
Because I can hear the concerns of the neighbors, if there are any. And typically what we do is we'll gather whatever information we think we need. I don't know that we need any more information. I think we know the facts are here. We close the public hearing. We then have 62 days to render a resolution.
62 days from today?
From today, if we close it.
Well, from whenever the public hearing is closed.
Yeah, if it's today, it would be 62 from today. If we extended the public hearing, say another month, to give us some more time to sift through the
Okay.
stuff,
Got it.
then it's 62 days from the closing of the public hearing.
Typically, 2 meetings.
Yeah.
But the ZBA usually tries to get it usually on the next meeting. So whenever the public hearing is closed, it's usually, a resolution is expected at the next meeting.
So I
And then we
have,
do our site inspection, again, we do our site inspection within the next couple of weeks, something like that, whatever's convenient for the parties and the representatives, if they want to be out there. It's usually a good idea.
On the site is staked,
Right.
everything.
But I think it would be a good idea for you to be out there
I will be.
to answer questions that are going to be going back and forth. And, we go out there collectively. We've done that several times, and
so here's, Mr. Ruse is a smart man and successful guy, and he could hire all these people to represent him and get all the facts. And I only had a week to do a preliminary, objection to how does this normally work? Can I have some time to get my own representation? I need some professional people here to back me up, because I don't know all what Mr. Gominsky knows. I don't know all. I don't know.
I'm more than happy to entertain that and to extend the public hearing another 30 days. I can ask my board members about that. If you feel that you want to have your own representation, your own experts, to take a look at this and submit more information to us, I have no problem with that. And we do that routinely, because we want everybody to have a fair hearing of this, both the applicant and the neighbors. So this may be one of those situations where, because of the extensiveness of what is being asked for, because of the points which are well-founded that you bring up, that we would extend this until, we'll extend the public hearing for another 30 days to give you the opportunity to submit information to us. We'll probably also do a site inspection as well.
That's great.
Before that.
Before that,
Yeah.
I think.
I appreciate
So
it.
that we would have been able to see.
Yeah.
both
You,
properties as well.
you said before that you were attorney, so you would know that it's going to take me time to get somebody and to delve into this. So I don't know if 30 days is enough. So I don't know how to.
We can't, we also, we have to balance things too. We can't just, hold things up. I don't know what your, let me ask you, Mark, what kind of plans do you have as far as breaking ground and doing that kind of stuff? Is this something where you're asking for, are we gonna hold you up if we
No,
extend it?
So actually, they're allowed to construct the principal residence.
Right.
Right, so it's been staked. The health department has signed plans. I've met on field inspection with the health department. They've approved the stake location, so it's ready for building permit.
Right, so you can go forward with the house.
So
And that's not our concern. The accessory structure is our concern.
so they're, by right, they can start construction of the residence.
Right,
You know,
so we're
there's
not
an
gonna hold
economy of scale of construction, obviously, so we were hoping to build the accessory structure and the house kind of concurrently, so that, we could utilize the crews in the most efficient way.
But they're
Um,
asking for 30 days is not unreasonable, especially given the points that he brings up and the fact that he is so close, and it's going to affect his view shed and all that. So I have absolutely no problem with that.
If we do that, I would like clarification on the second floor plan. Like,
In terms of like headroom, like showing.
If it's this height, and whatever the code says about headroom, because I think I had a
Yeah, I don't
building.
know if the code goes into how, they talk about how to measure height for a roof. And then they also talk about habitable space, which is defined in a certain way. I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
I'm pretty sure,
So
we have to.
you're referring to the building code. The building code, it articulates what height habitable spaces need to be. But
Okay.
in terms of what this board is reviewing, the zoning code of the town, no.
But there's a definition about what height habitable space is. Agreed?
Not in the town's zoning.
But there is in the
There's not.
building.
Yeah, it might, I can look at what it is in the zoning code. I don't know. So the building code is a little out, it's outside the.
I mean, I'm trying to do you a favor.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying the
But
building.
I'm also just
Yeah.
trying to have this be accurate. If it's that height, if it's a certain height on the second floor, and 20% of it is not habitable because it's 5 feet or under, just mark that out.
We can do that.
Because it changes the numbers that we
Well,
have to give you a
actually,
variance.
And
Right,
have-
it reduces
to
the variance, which makes it easier to grant.
So the planning board had sent you, the planning board sent you a memo, and you had addressed some of that. And
Yes.
so one of the questions was, so during the first meeting, introduction meeting, there was a question that was raised by Catherine as to, is it just a second floor that's habitable, or is it the whole structure? And what was left at was, because the bottom floor is also heated, it was considered habitable, which would make the habitable space 4,488. Now, the planning board memo had listed it as 1,630. So what does that represent, the 1630 measurement, and what is the habitable space?
I mean,
Well,
from my perspective, it's just, I'd like these to be accurate and
but we
in
need to know
agreement
also
with
just for
it.
the
Yeah.
decision and determining.
I think to answer both of your questions, we can visually represent on the plan the area that has appropriate headroom, which is what you're referring to, and what that associated square footage is.
Yeah, and I'd like to see on the elevations, I mean, if you're gonna have to update these things, I'd like to see on the elevations, just, you know, the notations of, this is this high, this is this high.
Sure.
This is an interior measurement, an exterior measurement, you know, so that we have all that.
Not a problem.
I mean, those are some of my main
And I
questions.
think that at the first meeting, we've also asked for the renderings of the accessory structure, which Scott kind of asked. So if we are setting a public hearing, if you could provide those. So what we're looking for is we're just looking for the accessory structure renderings colorized. I think if you, like, kind of like this. This is the
Yeah, like
principal
that.
structure. And we had asked for what the accessory structure would look like.
A four-sided rendering
Yeah,
of
just
the
to kind of, because
accessory
This
the
rendering here is not true.
So it's sort of like, if you look at the overall
Well,
site
that's-
plan, you're looking for zoomed in views of each side.
we're not, I wouldn't say it's zoomed in, it's more of just.
Sorry, the renderings that we have that show the overall relationship of the principal
Yeah, the
residence.
rendering, yeah. Right? Is this
Right.
what, is this? the-
Yeah, exactly. So I mean that it's shown there. So what you're looking for is
A standalone kind of thing, just like the house was. And then what would also be nice is to get although, you know, I like those kind of trees, is to, you know, get an idea of what's really out there. What's on the property,
If it's helpful, I took some pictures of the property yesterday,
okay?
so if you want to see them, I had brought them.
Well, that'd be great if you could submit them to Gretchen,
Okay.
just so we have them.
Yeah.
Just
And you
email
can
me.
email, yeah,
Okay.
just so we
Any
have that.
photographs that you have that could be labeled and you help us retain after we go to the site visit what
Yep.
we saw, and we'll take I'll take some photographs for sure from
Yes,
your
we have.
property, Doug, and, you know, that's my job.
That's what she does. She takes pictures.
And sometimes you appreciate it.
I always appreciate it. I don't have to
We
do
all
it.
do,
That's
absolutely.
right, exactly. All right, hey,
Okay.
okay,
I got two more real quick things.
okay, good.
Mr. Aruz has a brain trust here, and they've been working on this for, I don't know how long, 6 months or whatever, and they knew that they were asking for an excessive 300% bigger structure than what they were allowed to build.
Question?
Excuse me?
What's the question?
The question is, I don't think we're holding them up, because they had to know, the conversation had to come up, that they,
I'm gonna make a motion that we extend the public hearing. I will tell you that right now.
right,
And then you will have the opportunity to go out and get whoever you wish to assist you in your arguments for or against or whatever this project.
I don't know if 30 days is enough, I'll do my best, we'll see what happens.
There's folks out there, I'm sure you can find some folks to
They
give
couldn't
you
find an electrician or a plumber or a contractor to build a house.
engineers and people like that are easier to get a hold of.
And then, should Mr. Aruz and I speak about the buffer? I do want a buffer. I would like
Yes,
to
I
have
want
some of the beautiful trees, short trees, or should we all discuss that when we get there?
No, I want you to, your neighbors, I want you to talk, if you, just a favor to me,
Yeah,
okay? Talk to each other, and this has happened, and this is the way we really want the process, is you talk to each other and walk the property and say, all right, would you consider this, that, and the other thing? We've had it happen in the past where, you know, there's a kumbaya moment, and people get along and they figure out something that both sides can live with. So I encourage you to talk to
Okay,
your
very
neighbor as
good.
much as possible.
I appreciate
So,
your time.
I think, you know, sometimes walking the property together from all angles, you know, you will come up with something that everybody else didn't come up with.
Sure, we
So,
can solve this.
yes.
Or maybe you can agree to use the pool on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Come up with something, I'm sure.
I like that. I wish we could do that. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for being civil
Thank you.
and making your points well known. Very, very good discussion and very good points. But since there are so many of them, and I think we do have some questions, I'm going to make a motion that we extend the public hearing until the next date, November 16th. Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay. So, talk in the meantime, do what you gotta do, and then we'll have another public hearing next month. And then we'll- Yeah, oh, by the way,
In terms of meeting up at the site, how does that work?
yeah, who should we talk to? Mark, are you the best person to coordinate?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think
Is
what
that
we'd
all
like
right? Yeah,
to,
that's fine.
we would like to have everybody,
I'd like to do both at the same
Yes.
time.
Gretchen has my email and phone numbers and stuff.
Yes, yes,
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Anytime, any day, anytime, doesn't matter.
I'll send you the photos when I get home.
right.
Okay.
But you guys all figure out a date. Weekends are usually better for me, but whatever.
Oh, okay.
I'll make time for you guys and
There's some people who still work.
yes, the only person who still works here.
Hey, hey.
As long as it's not during soccer on Sunday, it's fine.
That's fine.
Hey, thanks for your
It's
time,
also
thank you very
football.
much.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Deb.
All righty, thank you very much.
Yeah, I would only be able to.
Okay, we'll
Thank
figure
you.
it out.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Good night, thank you.
All right, and finally, and I apologize for it taking so long, but there was a lot of stuff to talk about. We have the next public hearing is the case of Alexander Lloyd. And it's you. And we have your representative here, and I think you know what you're doing,
Yes.
what to do. So
Andreas,
please give
yeah.
us what you intend to do, and I know that we have a couple of folks, Greg and Catherine from Wilderstein here, who'll be asking a bunch of
Can
questions.
you see okay?
Yes.
Well, good evening, great
Okay.
to see you all again. Why don't, actually, do you mind if I use your
Oh, yeah.
laser pointer?
If you need a page, let me know.
If you don't mind, maybe we can zoom in. So, overview of the project, this will be a new single-family residence, 4-bedroom, primary structure, accessory structure that will be used as an art studio. As well, the scope will be a new driveway and a new septic supporting the private residence. So, to summarize, we're seeking 3 variances. The first variance is to encroach on the east side yard setback. The second variance is to build the accessory structure closer than the primary structure to Morton Road. And the third variance is building it closer than the 200-yard front yard setback. And then maybe, Kim, the best ones are the analysis that we do. I think it's on page 18. And so the site presents several challenges, and hopefully if we go through this analysis, you'll kind of understand why we cited the house the way it was. But for one thing, even though I know we're here for a variance, which is looking to seek some relief from the quantifiable setbacks, the reality is all we want to do is kind of fully embrace the spirit of the code. And what Rhinebeck's codes wonderfully put forth is how do you maintain and preserve the character of Rhinebeck, how do you protect the natural environment, and how do you protect kind of the physical environment. And we very much are trying to do just that. So if Kim, you don't mind, maybe we'll zoom in and then kind of scroll across. Thank you. Okay, that's good. And if you all can see, so this is the site. The site is just over 5 acres. This, to orient you, is Morton Road. This is effectively, there are a series of setbacks. The one thing to note about this is the parking setback. This is actually the side yard setbacks, which previously, when it was the prior zoning designation, they were actually here. Now that it's in HP 20, they set back to the 150. If you actually draw both of these setbacks up to Morton Road, you end up with actually a very little sliver because your frontage is about just over 300 feet, and so the setbacks almost merge to the middle. But what you see here is what is the as-of-right buildable area once you set back on all the constraints. So what we really start with from an as-of-right situation to avoid any variances is that's our usable land. What's worth noting is, and part of the reason why he was drawn to this site because it's so spectacular, but we've got natural outcroppings within that as of right parcel. Yeah, do you mind? Another thing to note is we have a conservation easement, which is 100 feet from Morton Road. Now, we've already gotten the approvals from Scenic Hudson, so we went through a process by which Scenic Hudson, if you're not familiar, this easement is all about protecting the views from Morton Road. So what we did is we filed for an approval. Part of that approval was the septic system. Septic systems require fairly level ground. There's another analysis that shows this, but more than 77% of our site is steep slope. So what does that mean? It means obviously the septic cannot exist there. It also means that if you go to build, you run the risk of destabilizing the soils, of affecting the drainage, and then also of creating instability for the trees. So there's a natural flat. We don't know actually what derived, whether this is all original topography or whether someone cleared it well in the past. But we located the septic here so as to minimize, and in fact, because there's a natural clearing, we minimize the number of trees, we minimize the soil disruption. And Scenic Hudson, because they saw all of the restrictions on the site, gave us the approval to encroach very slightly on the easement. In getting the approval, for which they also approved the driveway. The other thing to note, and you all probably felt it today on the site, is the driveway kind of follows the natural topography of the land. So the septic kind of takes into account the flat point we have here. The driveway takes into account the natural topography that already exists. And then we will be planting back, I think, 5 trees per the approval of Scenic Hudson. So that's already been addressed. And then if we go, Kim, to the bottom left, please. So after we overlay kind of the as of right allowable area, the outcroppings, the easement, we also found that the site had archaeological remnants. These turned out to be what they believed were either servants, all of the workers who worked on the adjacent estates. They found pieces of glass fragments, of dolls and such. And so they came, they did the full survey, they removed all of the remnants, all of that was cataloged. We identified there are some wall remnants here, and so the option was, do you remove those and go to the next phase of preservation, or do you do a buffer to avoid them altogether? And so we chose to do the buffer. So these dark spots that you're seeing here are actually not the extents of the remnants of the walls that were found. It's actually the maximum buffer that they asked us to do to ensure that nothing gets disturbed. So now at this point, this is kind of what we see are the no-fly zones for any development. Then when you apply the 77% steep slope, for which again has detrimental effect on the environment, you see that what's left is the flat zone that we have, that we're utilizing for the septic, and then we have some of this area, and then as well kind of in between where the driveway is. And if we go to the next one, please. And then effectively, this is what we have left for the buildable area. So what the proposal chooses to do, if we go to, I think it's maybe PDF page 18.
No, this is 18.
Oh, is this 18? Oh, maybe we just go to the next one then. Got it. So that's essentially once you remove all of the kind of buildable area, the non-buildable area, you end up with this white residual, these kind of 3 fragments. What we wanted to do is we wanted to say, okay, well, we know what our site challenges are. That's clear. What does the code say that we could do as of right? Is there a way that one could avoid the variances altogether? So we looked and said, okay, well, what is the as of right buildable area? If really that setback is what we can build, we can as of right build of a certain height, a certain mass, certain square footage, and we would have that volume right there. We have no interest in doing that, obviously, because we're not looking to build kind of a large artificial box on what is a beautiful kind of natural topography. you don't take something that you would put on a flat lawn in suburbia and like stick it in this kind of incredible character. But again, as of right, we could be building something with a much greater mass, much higher visibility than what we're proposing now. Similarly, you have an as of right, which is a maximum building coverage. As of right, we can cover 5% of the site. This is just illustrating, it's not saying that this is something that we would do, because 5% of the site is actually half of our entire as of right area. It also encompasses the beautiful rock outcroppings for which we would never build on and destabilize those. Those are such a huge part of what the character is. But again, as of right, without being here in front of everyone, we could build this large mass with this height with no variances. But again, that would negate every reason you bought the property. So what we're proposing is, again, trying to utilize as much of that as of right site as we do have that's within stable soil, and then following the natural contours. So kind of across the midline of the site, the topography, is kind of level here. So we're trying to nestle the new structure within that topography, which allows us to take what is primarily the majority of the house as a single-story structure and follow that contour across. We recognize in doing so that breaches the east yard setback of the HP 20. What's important to note, though, had the setbacks never been changed and it was kind of the original, we'd be as of right. So it's the HP 20 that we are kind of going over. And then you see the accessory structure here. What's important to note about the accessory structure is that the reason that we're going closer to the road than the primary and closer to the road than the 200 setback is, again, the steep slopes, the kind of avoiding the destabilization of the soils, avoiding more tree clearing, because what we're actually trying to do is utilize existing clearings. And again, you'll remember from the previous slides, all of the archaeological remnants and sites were here. So maybe we can go to, I think the next one's probably. So what you see here is we're doing kind of a comparison between the three analyses you saw before. So if we built as of right buildable area, which was kind of dead center in the site, utilizing the rock outcroppings, we can build this full height mass. If we were utilizing the maximum building coverage, which actually we could only achieve if we disrupted the outcroppings, we could build this entire mass and height. And these are all, sorry, noting these are views from Morton Road. And then
and the actual trees, is that right?
Yeah. And these are the actual trees, and I was going to get to that, but thank you, Alex. Get to that in the renderings. It's important to note all of the trees depicted in the plans, in the line elevations, in the renderings. A survey, we did a laser survey. They are just 6-inch caliper and up. So it means that when you go there, you actually see much more foliage because we don't have any understory. We don't have any calipers that are less than the 6 inches. And then the other thing to note, and you'll see it from the views from your site, we don't have Wilderstein's site surveyed. So there are many more trees that we don't even have that create the visual buffer in your benefit. But what you see here from Morton Road, and again all the trees that are actually surveyed, is that because this whole thing becomes nestled in that kind of plateau midline, that we have, the one-story structure of the main living house is actually not even visible. And then you see a little bit of the art studio, accessory structure, and then what you see here popping up is the guest rooms above the garage.
What is the height from the road for this that would be visible?
It's 17 feet.
How much feet?
17.
Above the average of Morton Road.
Yeah, it's actually, exactly. It's right there. And then Kim, go to the next one.
How tall is the person on Morton Road?
We actually went, I think, a little higher than we should have to give a little more visibility for the
6 or 7
renderings.
feet.
So yeah, I went with my height. But again, what you're seeing here is we, started with the little foothold that we could have with whatever allowable site we had, and then just stretched it along that contour so that we could keep the project as low to the ground as possible. What you're seeing here is, imagine if you're looking kind of straight across, hovering kind of above the water. These are all the topographic lines. And so again, the one-story structure of the primary part of the residence is within that topography, you know, not disrupting the outcropping and staying along those lines. And again, what you're seeing here beyond is the average level of Morton Road. So that's why when we were looking before, you just saw this and you just saw that. These are just kind of illustrating, you know, again, what you're seeing here is the other important thing to note is by following the natural topography, by having the septic be where it is, by having the driveway follow, and following this contour, we're looking to minimize site excavation. And we're also looking that anything we have to cut, we can utilize to fill kind of on site so that we're kind of keeping natural materials remaining. And then again, what you're seeing here in the green is what you would effectively be seeing from the surrounding properties. And here are the renderings. So this is important to show as well. So I know, you know, y'all are very concerned about it. Our entire site is just over 5 acres. The parcel that's delineated between Wilderstein and our property line is also 5 acres. So you effectively almost have our site size between you and our site itself. This is that parcel here. So the views, and we purposely walked the site and kind of the beautiful public trails that you have here. And so the views we have, and we'll go through them all, winter and summer, are from the water, from that inflection point we talked about, kind of along the public path, Morton Road. And if you want to continue, Kevin.
While you have this up, so that's
Sure.
the Wilderstein house. What
Yeah.
are the other buildings and that other little white? Yeah, just if you
Yeah.
could name the other Wilderstein
So
buildings.
one's the gatehouse, right?
Carriage house, yeah.
Carriage and gatehouse, and then the main Wilderstein house. And then I know that there, and then this is the
Parking
walking
area.
path here.
And that is the little parking area
Yeah.
up there?
Yes, yes.
And so that's the kind of administrative building just
Correct,
right there?
correct, correct.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know if that's where you all park today or. And then if we.
Is there a site visit today?
It was actually the
Planning
planning people who came today.
Oh,
Just coincidentally, some people from
oh,
planning.
the planning.
Oh, the
board.
planning
did
did
it.
it.
Oh,
Did it
right, right.
today.
Sorry.
We didn't miss it.
Yeah. Exactly, sorry.
Didn't get the memo.
I know, me neither.
You realize you were marked absent. I was wondering why you looked like a deer caught in headlights there. But, so this is the view from the water, and again, all of these are modeled without any of the understory. So when you look at the photos, this is actually not as visible as it is, but you can see there's the primary residence there. This is the view from the Wilderstein path, and again, these are all the trees that currently exist, only 6-inch caliper and up. You do not see the structure. The other thing to note is we didn't just try to be sensitive in massing by building less than we could as a height, as a massing, and as a lot coverage, but our intention is to utilize only natural material palette, darker palette, to kind of recede and minimize visibility. And then if we go, so again, what's not shown here, and you know, it might be a good thing to kind of walk together on the Wilderstein path and look, because you'll see everything staked out. You would see much more of the understory and all the other trees that aren't shown here. This is Morton Road, and this is, to your point, where we're, I think, perched up a little higher just because we were doing a rendering, so we wanted to kind of see the structures and such, but they're very minimally visible. And then we can just jump down to the summer, but these are comparative. So obviously with the deciduous trees, you see very little. Now the one thing that we're obviously not rendering here is this is the existing landscaping. The landscaping is a huge part of what we want to do, and also potentially additional buffers that aren't even depicted here. And we can look at the landscape plan, but we're working with an incredible landscape architect who wants to kind of work with us to do a regenerative forest and find ways. This is kind of a very new growth forest, so we want to find ways of being smart about stormwater management, rain gardens, bioswales and such, but then also too, any landscaping we can be utilizing and thinking about seasonally what creates visual buffers. And then if if we go back to, so again, this was the Morton Road in the summer, the one to the left. This is the view from Wilderstein. Again, once you put all the foliage in, you don't really see anything.
And this is from Wilderstein, we mean
Yeah.
the closest point
Right.
that the
Along
closest
the
trail
public path. Yeah.
comes to the property line.
Right. Not from the main estate.
Right, which has that whole extra 5-acre lot in between.
And then from the water, nothing once we're in the summer. Yeah, maybe we'll go, I know we didn't talk about it before, but we could go forward and if you're interested in see the landscape plan. Oh, and then you could, but this is kind of a good overview, you know, here's the size of the site, you know, here are the structures, the main Wilderstein. You know, what we were talking again about is, you know, we were there showing you the view of the closest point along kind of that public path. You know, about right here, this is not anything from the primary structure. That was not modern art. It was actually analysis, Langen Engineering. We've done very in-depth analysis. Basically red, you know, means steep slope. You know, everyone understands the universal language of red. But, and you can see here, so this is, you know, again, here's our 2 chambers. Here's the septic, trying to utilize what we can from that flat. You know, the little bit of flat that we do have, you know, again, we illustrated already, but here's your conservation easement. So most of the flat that we have, actually, we couldn't touch anyway. Here's, and again, when you go to the site, you'll feel it, kind of the natural topography of the driveway, you know, kind of coming here. And again, utilizing landscaping and the natural. So even though you see the red here, it's flat, but what's dropping off is basically all of the topography below. Again, the septic. This is just showing kind of the regrading. I mean, what's important to us, obviously, is how the septic can kind of naturally form into the landscape. The last thing we want to see is some sort of artificial mound. You know, the best we can hope for is no one ever thinks that we even have septic on the site.
Is this gravity fed or is it pump?
A pump?
Pump,
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's gotta go up.
Gotta go up, because the plateau is above where the house is.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you could build, if the conservation easement weren't there,
Yeah.
you probably would have flipped it, and
Yeah.
you might build in that strip along the road.
Right.
But it is there, and it's kind of great that it's there because
Yeah.
it keeps the road looking like it does.
Yeah. So you can see here you know, again, the driveway following that natural topography. Our hope would be that the plantings, you know, there are allowable plantings you can do on the septic, and so that it looks like an open meadow. It looks, you know, very natural. You know, again, we're not trying to superimpose artificial landscape onto this beautiful property. And then, you know, to bring, and I know we spoke about this before we had the meeting, to kind of bring some of the new landscape here right now with some of the drainage and some of the destabilized soils and trees. A lot of them have fallen in this location, so we'd be looking to kind of bring some of those back.
So is the open meadow, what's classified as open meadow and sloping meadow, is that fairly unforested now?
This is pretty much cleared, and this is pretty much cleared. I think what we did, and part of even the location of the house beyond following the topography, was actually kind of negotiating around the trees.
Around trees.
Mhm.
And have you, as of yet, designated what those plantings are going to be, whether they're going to be evergreens or what kind of trees you're looking to plant there?
Do you know
I think the text on here alludes
Oh,
to
okay.
that.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, he was looking to
I have it here.
create forest ladder at the edges, so
Right.
plant some evergreens at the boundary between the current mostly deciduous forest and where it says open meadow, because that gives you nice screening, and it also like lets the squirrels run up and down
Right.
and so forth. And for the meadow mix, landscape architect found that Hudson Valley Farm Hub has been running these experiments of what plant mixes do well across various seasons and stuff. So instead of just saying like, oh, this is a lawn or whatever, he's just indirecting through, you know, we're gonna plant the mix that the Hudson Valley Farm Hub people say makes sense. when it's flat and when it's sloping, because you want two different mixes that handle the different degree of soil moisture that you get on the flat and the slope. So the idea is then that this septic area that has to be big for a type 2 septic fill looks like a meadow that just naturally filters into the forest with deciduous transitioning, with conifers at the edge between the meadow and the forest. And I'm sorry, I don't remember which conifers, it's in the text somewhere.
No, that's fine, thank you.
And this is where, because we have somewhat of a low point here, so naturally creating wet meadows to take any runoff.
Are there any other plans you want to see?
We can go to maybe the elevations.
Is that in the same plan?
It should be in the same, what do you think, is that? Maybe page 16.
Page number, sorry. Has to be before this.
It'll be before this section.
Yeah, it'll be before.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah, no worries.
It's a big file.
We've been told.
And I think, I don't know, the color elevations came after, so I don't know if they're in this set or so.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
okay, yeah. That's okay. But you can see here, this is cutting a section through the topo, but effectively the majority of what you're usually going to see is the one story along the plateau between the two different slopes, and obviously just after the outcropping is where you have the steep slope.
We do have colored elevations that you submitted.
Yeah, they might not be.
Gretchen, do you know if we're working with the revision? Oh, yeah, that looks like just the right thumbnail, right?
Well, these are the elevations. They might not have been updated with the color ones we sent, but you can still get a sense of the character. So for the most part, even though this is showing it as if you're kind of zoomed out from the water, again, the reality is, and from the Wilderstein side, this is the topo that you're seeing. So this is that midline topo. This is what's bridging from basically west to east. And then you've got the second story pop-up of the garage and the cottage here. So effectively that's. And then from an orientation, so this is where you all are.
Is that all glass?
This is glass, correct. Not all of it, but this is glass. This is solid. Combination of wood, stone, metal, glass. And you can see here, again, how it's kind of following the natural topography. But the midline of most of the kind of level is what you're seeing right here.
So this is now looking from the east toward it, this particular view?
Yes. And so what you had seen you didn't see any of it through the trees, but effectively, from the topo is what you're seeing. So.
Thank you.
We sent a lot, so I could talk for 5 more hours, but
Right.
I prefer to hear people's questions.
It's good.
You know.
It was a good presentation.
I don't think I've ever done a broad
Yeah.
I don't think in 20 years I've ever done this one.
I feel like we have.
But whatever. We'll talk about it later. All right, so Kim wants me to open the public hearing at this point in time. So thank you very much, Andrea, for the presentation. And then I think we probably have some questions from Greg. Yeah, come on up. Just announce who you are and why you're here and who you represent, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Hi, I'm Greg Sakaris. I'm the Executive Director of Wilderstein Historic Site, and I submitted a written comment. I don't have a lot to add, but what I will say is I got to having this conversation with the folks that have been working on this project and the owner of the property, and it does seem like a very nice project in many ways. We are concerned about the side yard setback request as far as lowering it by 90 feet. 90 feet's a lot. We're concerned about buffering. Wilderstein is a property that's open to the public. Looking to the future, it's likely to become.
Could I interject a clarification?
Sure.
It's a 60-foot variance that we're asking.
We're maintaining the 90s.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
In any case, any lowering of the buffer is of concern for us. The property is open to the public. Looking to the future, it's likely that Wilderstein will become more active as we move forward. That part of the property has our trailhead, it has our office facility, and it has a carriage house, which is a building which will likely become more and more active as we move forward. So I guess what I'd like to ask is would it be possible to have less of a variance requested as far as just moving the project over a bit so that there's not so much of a location of the project on the property line.
Am I allowed to talk?
Absolutely. Of course you're allowed to talk.
Sure, Richard. Well, I think that's a fair question, but I guess I always want to balance between the qualitative and the quantitative. My argument would be, you can pull it back, but to what effect? Because ultimately, all you care, I would presume, it's not about the Google Map look. It's more about what the visibility is, and you're maintaining your character of your beautiful historic site. So, the reality is that, we can't push, right now there's actually a huge valley here that you don't see, but you can look at in the topography. So certainly, if it was a matter of pushing the house, effectively I would say you can push it all you want, but it's still that same structure that's just moving, 10, 20 feet? Like, what's the number that makes sense? But I think what we should try to solve for is, your concern is, how do I maintain, the minimal visibility? And I think we've done that from a massing, from a stylistic, from materiality, and again, love to walk the site with you and look at that, because again, the renderings probably are more forgiving and visible than the actual landscaping, but with the landscaping, with potentially new landscaping, if you don't have the visibility, what do the numbers mean? I think what we tried to do is we tried to embrace the intent of the code, and to be sensitive to, most of the projects we do aren't single-family residents. Most of them are in, areas where we have to empathize with and really put ourselves in the position of every one of the neighbors around. So much of what we did had you all in mind, because again, why he picked this site was, one, it's Rhinebeck. Two, it's this wonderful natural topography. Three, Wilderstein is a huge asset to the community. So, we're very mindful of that, and I know we'd kind of work with you on kind of increasing whatever visual buffer, but right now, the visual buffer, even in its current state, is quite opaque. It's quite solid. So, your concerns are very valid. I guess I just want to speak to the, what are the goals, what are we trying to achieve, and less talk about kind of shifting things around. And I think what you want to achieve is again, creating that buffer so that as you have more and more public here, there's no way that that's going to detract them from.
It sounds like a buffering kind of situation, which could be cured. The other thing is, this sounds like another possibility to have a joint inspection.
Yeah.
And we can all go out at the same time
idea.
and walk around and go from the Wilderstein site, the closest part, Greg, that you're concerned about, and then we can go on to the other property and do that together. And I think that would be very useful and helpful. But buffering is I think, something that...
Yeah, we're looking to avoid problems in the future.
Right.
And just the physical proximity to the property line, regardless of how many trees or the topography, it's ultimately, I think, something of concern, and we just want to make sure that whatever decision gets made, it's the best one moving forward, because hopefully Wilderstein will be there forever. Once a building gets constructed, it's usually there for a very long time, but we all know the trees come and go. We know the property owners change. So these decisions I think are really important to the longer term picture.
Agreed.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did the Williston Board ever consider buying that property? I know it's been on the market for quite a while, and I would think to enlarge your trails and things like that. Was it ever considered?
The property went on the market and was purchased rather quickly. We did consider purchasing it and would have loved to added that to the estate and to the site, but that was not meant to be, unfortunately.
One thing I mentioned to Greg just before this meeting was that actually in a pre-conference before buying the land, I got to meet with Melody, who was long ago on the Wilderstein board and obviously just considers herself a steward of preservation in Rhinebeck. And she made a big point of saying, what are you going to care about, Melody? And she was like, the view from Wilderstein. Mm-hmm. So since February of 2020, we've been designing to the view from Wilderstein as one of the main things to try to be mindful of. The other thing, I was a minor technical answer. It's hard to see on the topo here, but a just very practical reason against shoving to the northwest is that there's another big rock outcrop just off that corner.
This is the whole valley, and then this rock outcropping.
And so there's the major one to the left and a smaller one to the right, and we're trying to make sure that when you're on site, and you'll see this in your walkthrough, the house feels deferential to the rock outcroppings, that it's sort of, a guest of the hill. And so we kept it pulled back far enough to keep a sort of healthy distance from the outcropping to that end. And so if the house slides that way, then it starts to crowd that interesting natural feature.
Could you clarify for me what is the distance between the property line and the house?
Well, the short line is the 62.6. I don't know what the actual offset is, but that's the shortest.
And the zoning, what does the zoning require?
What is it, 150? 150.
Yes.
Okay. So you're right, it is
90. So it's 90
You're right.
feet.
The 60 feet is on the other side. 90 is on our side.
87 and a half.
Gotcha.
Looking for 28.
So 90 feet is a
Considerable.
significant
That's the
Significant.
variance requested.
significant number of feet.
What's the variance request?
So it's
28?
87.
No, so it's the required
that
is
changed in the
150
zoning
feet,
code.
the house is 62.
But
And so the
this
variance
setback is
request
not for a
is
parcel of this size, so that's the issue. Those setbacks are not for a 5-acre parcel.
And we're within,
Sorry.
as I
It
think
was
Andrea
originally-
mentioned, what the setbacks are for, like if this was the current Rhinebeck 5-acre zoning, we're within those
Yeah.
setbacks.
Yeah, so we're kind of dealing with much larger setbacks for much larger parcels on this 5-acre site. And so that's why it's kind of disproportionate. And that's why I said, if you translate those setbacks up to Morton Road, you end up with effectively a walkway onto the site that's buildable.
So the 62 is the shortest distance.
Correct.
Between the lines.
Correct.
Like the end of the house and the other lot line is maybe.
Correct. It's kind of like an inflection point.
Something,
Exactly.
Still under the 150.
Mhm.
And the Wilderstein carriage house is then, kind of, is it in this area, do you know, Craig? I guess we'd have to go back.
Right
and
here,
look
we
at
can
the
go
map.
back to, you can look proportionally.
Go back to the other site plan, it showed it.
Yeah.
There's a 5-acre parcel between us and any of the Wilderstein structures, I think including the office. I think only the parking lot itself is what's currently
Within that 5-acre
within
parcel.
that adjacent 5-acre
has
parcel.
an area.
But it does contain our trailhead, so it is active, an active part of Wilderstein.
No, we understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Wilderstein is 40 acres in its entirety, including 3 separate parcels, one of which is the 5-acre parcel adjacent to this parcel.
Maybe Kim, if you go to the first page.
Yeah,
so
the
the
I
coverage
think
sheet
what
has
you're
a-
saying is, The 5-acre parcel that's between is owned by you.
Correct,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Right.
I kept wondering.
Right, so
where
this
that
is
is.
effectively.
So that,
Right.
yeah, so the 5-acre parcel
That's
has
it.
our trailhead parking area, which you're probably familiar with.
Right, yeah. Oh, there it is.
And the trail begins there and
And
cuts
kind of
through.
swings out.
Yeah,
Right.
this is the parking lot, and the
Yeah.
trail kind of goes
Yeah.
through here and around.
Right. And this was what Alex was mentioning, kind of 5-acre parcel here.
And from looking at the house was kind of
Right.
right in there.
Correct.
And the diagram is just illustrated in the diagram where the renders are summer and winter.
Oh, right, yes, Kim, please, if you go to the
Yeah.
rendering page.
Oh,
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yes.
Ah, it's all clear now. Imagine that.
Yeah, so just blow that up so it's a little easier to see.
The distance
Right,
or
yeah.
the.
Right.
So could you show the parking area again?
Just right there.
And the trail goes out?
No security.
So the view we were showing was a little closer than the trail itself.
Now, is that a rise, or is that, no, maybe that's a road coming in. Is that a road, number 2, is that
Oh.
a road?
No, that's a walking path.
Oh, you're walking.
And then, oh, and that dotted thing is the
That's another
ravine.
walking path?
That drops down.
No, this is actually a valley.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
swale within, you'll see kind of the natural
Oh,
drainage.
Okay.
You know, when you have to kind of
Yeah.
hop over that. No, this is the walking path
Okay.
for Wilderstein.
Which is part of why it's hard to see as much from the Wilderstein path, because it's very steep in there, so you're looking at the canopy of the trees that are lower in both sides of that swale.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
But I really think that the critical point is that if we were to build the massing or the envelopes that we studied in pink and, or I don't remember the color, pink and cyan or whatever, which is as of right, I mean, the views would be really
Right.
not
Yeah,
desirable. from
the issue
east.
is, right, what Gisela is saying is the issue is if we, again, build exactly what we're allowed to build with the masses and the heights, you're up higher at this
Right,
top
yeah.
point here.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, kind of similar to the concerns of the previous, you're at the highest point, kind of doing this citadel at 35 feet. And so then we're starting to kind of compete with these structures here. We're actually trying to be more of a landscape language.
Any other questions, concerns?
Yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful project. It's just that it is, we are a forever organization. And so it is our job, it's not our home, it's our job as representatives of the organization to just express that this is a concern. So that's where we are. And there are a lot of things that can be mitigated, but we would not be doing our jobs if we did not.
100%. Why you're here.
Yeah.
And with the last group, it sounds like you guys have formed a relationship waiting around for the meeting to occur, so I would encourage you to keep that up and talk and voice concerns and all. And I think we should do a joint visit. So, but anyway, before we get there,
Well, can I just say one more thing?
Would you
Also,
mind actually just, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm Catherine Sharapko, the Assistant Director at Wilderstone. And we have experience on our other side where the neighbor who was making some changes to their property talked a lot about buffering, did do that, and then sold the property, and immediately all of the buffering, or much of the buffering was removed by the next owner. So, as a forever organization, we've experienced that.
I think maybe that's where Gisela's point comes in, that your ultimate protection there is the fact that the cross-section of built structure that you can see from that side is much reduced by our doing these variances.
Yep.
Where the forever thing, if it was the citadel, as Andrea put it,
Right.
would be, I would be mad if I were you guys.
Right, exactly. Well, yes, exactly. And the topography is a much better buffer than a couple of trees.
Right.
It's a little bit more extended, the footprint, but that's why it allows us to nest it, to bring it down into the topography, so it's less visible.
And I know there was that exchange with the previous applicant about the cost of spreading out. The cost of this spreading will
Yeah.
be major. The cost of designing this spreading is already significant.
Yes.
And so we've taken that hit of the larger footprint to get the lower massing and more delicate cross-section, as you see from the sides.
Yeah, actually, cost with the client really never was a concern until at least until now, because it was all about, you know, what's best for the site, you know, what's best for this property and for the neighbors and for.
And there's absolutely no wiggle room as far as just moving it a little bit farther away from the property line?
If we had more wiggle room in the septic,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
The other big constraint that we didn't dwell on that much in this presentation is how, because the type 2 septic, Dutchess County Department of Health requires this huge buffer of flat fill around the trenches, and by the time you can't put it in the conservation easement. You know, we originally went to Scenic Hudson and said, hey, can we put a bunch of our septic in the conservation easement because it's by far topographically the obvious thing to do. And they said, you have a very restricted easement. No. And so we went back with the engineers and played all of the tricks that DCDOH allows to shrink it as much as possible, found a spot where we can reuse as much of the clearing that is there, the existing clearing, as possible. And then Scenic Hudson has already given us a 10 or 15 foot sort of creep into the 100-foot strip. So already that was a sort of 6-month reshuffle of the whole house plan, and part of also why the house is wrapping around the topo lines, but also wrapping around the corner of the septic. It's in the engineering plans that are towards the end of this deck. And so we're already squeezing it. To the left, there's the drop off. To the right, there's the septic. To the north, there's the other nifty outcropping that I don't want to crowd. And we got rid of our central entryway, which also shortened the house, and moved it into the crossbar. So you enter actually in that.
Maybe if you go to
Kind of walk along the
engineer
natural
plan.
into this right here.
So shifting what was a central entryway from the sort of hockey stick piece into the crossbar, chopped a whole room off the length and pulled us back further from the property line.
Which you'll see
that's
when you
another-
go. You'll see the staking and how it kind of nestles.
I think that's another good point, that most of the circulation to and from the house is on the opposite side than Silver Thing, so it's really on the other side.
Well, and the house itself is screening the driveway, which is kind of good.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the more you try to push the house closer to the road, the higher it goes in relation to Navistar. So.
And then the tension with the view from Morton Road. We all love how minimal that view, even her, 10-foot person standing in Morton Road and all those renderings, you still barely see the tops of it cresting up. Even if we could somehow cheat the septic, which I think we've exhausted every option there, if it went closer to the road, it would be going uphill. And then you'd be seeing more of it from Morton Road, which is a designated scenic road, which
Well,
is
it'd be
also
more visible to Wilderstein.
Yeah, that's right.
and more visible to Wilderstein. Yeah. So
And you bring up a very good point, which is, the house tries to kind of nestle, embrace, and somewhat screen, the vehicular activity and any of the activity kind of to and from. So what's nice is, even though this might be closer to you, the reality is the house is actually defining, most of the outdoor activity, pedestrian, vehicular. So what you see is just the natural topography and the landscaping. All of this is going to be the residual topo.
I mean, from a professional standpoint, point of view, is definitely the best thing to do in this site, honestly. Like, in all honesty, really. And I'm not talking about the design of the house. It's just about deciding about, how to not really just keep it as natural
touch the
as
land
possible.
lightly.
Questions, concerns? Site visit. Okay, well, first, I think we have plenty of information, and I appreciate everybody giving the additional information on all the questions, and also disability. I always appreciate that. So at this point in time, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have 62 days to render a resolution. In that time frame, we will contact you, and I'm not sure, who's the best person to contact as far as doing the site inspection? Okay, all right, so.
Yeah, Gretchen.
And Gretchen, yeah.
She has a direct line to Gretchen.
Yeah, and then also we want to get the Wilderstein folks involved too, because we
Just go
want
to the
to
office.
do a, go onto the Wilderstein site, see what they see, your site, and if we all do it together, I think it's going to work out nicely. So we'll do that in the next maybe couple of weeks when it's convenient for everybody.
We usually have to have our meetings on weekends. Is that gonna work for both of you, for Wilderstein and? You're there all the
Yes.
time?
We're there all
We
the
live
time.
there.
Yeah.
We live
Okay.
there. All right, great. Well, thank you very much.
I was teasing about that. We do not live there. We just feel as if we live
That
there.
almost became a zoning issue.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for
All right, thank
everything,
you.
and we'll
Thank
see
you
you in
for
a
your
couple of
time.
weeks or so.
Thank you very much.